Hello and welcome to this FMB business webinar. My name's Hayley. I'm Director of Membership at the FMB. And whether this is your first FMB webinar or you've been to many of these sessions in the past, you're very welcome and thank you for giving us your time this afternoon. Our aim with these webinars is to provide you with essential information to help you to run your business. Last time we focused on cash flow, and if you missed that webinar and you're interested in catching up with it, that's still available to you on the FMB members area of the website, along with a whole host of other useful webinars. But today's topic is equally important to anyone running a business in terms of protecting yourself and your business, and that's insurance. And we're joined by two of my colleagues from FMB Insurance Services who will introduce themselves to you in a minute. And what they don't know about insurance in the building industry isn't worth knowing. But just some housekeeping items first. So the webinar should take about 45 minutes or so to get through the content that the guys have got to share with you. Depending how many questions we get, we might run on a little bit longer at the end. And in terms of questions, if anything does occur to you as we're going through the webinar session, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you just hover your mouse down there, you'll be able to see that. Just type any questions in there as briefly as you can, and we'll save those up and cover them at the end of the session. You will receive a follow-up email after the session, which will have the speaker's contact details and everything in there as well. And if you'd like to share any ideas of other topics you'd like to see us covering with FMB webinars in the future, we're always interested to hear those as well. So I think that's everything that I need to cover. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Emma and Chris at FMB Insurance. Thanks.
Thank you, Hayley, and thank you everybody for joining. So I'm just going to share some slides now. Hopefully you should all be able to see. So as Hayley discussed, we're here today to talk to you about construction insurance and making sure that businesses are correctly protected. There are two of us here today, myself and Chris. So I am the director of FMB Insurance. I've been working in construction insurance now for 13 years, and with me, Chris, is the manager of our sales team and has been working in construction insurance for the last 15 years or 22 years within the insurance industry more generally. Both of us hold qualifications with the Chartered Insurance Institute, and as Hayley said, if we don't know it, that it's not worth knowing. We know everything about construction insurance. So today we wanted to focus on a number of different learning objectives through the sessions. The first was to remind everyone of the insurance policies that members need for their businesses, but also for the projects that you're undertaking and for your clients to make sure that they are correctly covered. We're going to look at how to use insurance as a tool to stand out from the crowd, as well as looking at underinsurance and the dangers of cost cutting, before finally just talking about the benefits of using a construction insurance broker. So firstly, I want to touch on this in its simplest terms. What is the point of insurance? Ultimately, insurance is there to make you back to the same financial position that you were before a loss occurred. Whether that be in your business, whether it be personally, we all have insurances that we have to have in place. And today we're going to start with a reminder of the insurance policies that members need for their businesses, first of all. So I'm going to hand over to Chris to focus and take us through the first insurance policies that all members should be taking out.
So good afternoon. My name's Chris, and I'm going to go through a brief overview really of the insurance policy we have on offer, and a brief overview of what they cover as well. So the first one we'll start with is public liability insurance. So public liability insurance covers for accidental damage to the third-party property or injury to third parties. It's not a legal requirement, but it is an expectation that every contractor would generally hold this. There are various limits available from 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10, 15, depending on your needs and wants. In general, the type of claims that we tend to see on things for public liability is third-party property damage. So, for instance, a plumber doing some work at someone's property and drilling into a pipe, causing a flood. That could be placed under the public liability insurance as a property damage for the flood. Also, there's contingency cover there as well for bona fide subcontractors under the public liability section as well. And also, for instance, someone walking past the property and works on going on the roof and a tile falls down and hits that person walking past. Again, that could be a potential claim under the public liability section under personal injury. So that's the public liability section. The second part is employers' liability insurance, which is a legal requirement where you have employees, permanent, temporary, subcontractors, in particular labour-only subcontractors and apprentices, etc. covered. Employer's liability pays the legal costs and compensation if an employee sues due to work-related injury or illness. Things such as, I mean, in the past we've had cases where an employee suffers from noise-induced hearing loss due to operation of construction equipment. Claims for those sort of things have come through in the past. Say, for instance, an apprentice is hit by a falling object whilst on site. That could potentially be an employee liability claim. It is important to note as well that construction worker fatalities in the UK are 70% higher than before the COVID pandemic, according to the latest annual statistics from the Health and Safety Executive, HSE. Number of deaths across the UK has remained steady, but construction has increased considerably since 2018 and 2019. So the next one is contract works insurance, or what it can be called contractors all risk cover. This type of cover is designed to cover the cost of works already undertaken if the project is damaged or destroyed before completion. Covers similar perils to your home insurance, but for the works that are currently underway. Cover can also include things such as your own plant and machinery, hired in plant, machinery, or temporary buildings. Also included potentially is employees' tools and personal effects, stock and materials as well. So the type of potential claims that you may get under a contract all risk section, things such as heavy winds blowing off, say, a part of a roof that's just been constructed, destroying that roof, that will put the builder back in a position they were before that happened to rebuild that roof. Another thing is almost if you're, say, £100,000 worth of work is almost completed and there's a fire on the site which destroys most of that. Again, the contracts all risk section will pay out to put you in the same position you were before the fire to continue works and make sure you get to where you were before that incident happened. So yeah, that's the contractors all risk section of the policy. The next part on this is it's fairly new, to be honest, I think, for builders nowadays, is professional indemnity insurance. It's always previously been assumed that the PI is something held by an architect. Design and build contractors do need this, and what considers or what constitutes advice is if an architect is doing the structural element and the main contractor is responsible for the electrical mechanical design, then of course they would need some PI cover there because of the electrical mechanical design part. Also, any changes to the plan. We've seen examples of aircon units being moved without the architect's knowledge. The builder's moved it because it's not in the place it should be in. It doesn't work on those plans. So the builders had to make those changes, which may cause issues further down the line. If the builder's taken that decision to slightly deviate from the plans they've been given, that could potentially put them in a place where they are potentially sued for that. Professional indemnity cover covers damage, negligence, breach of duty, financial loss, defamation, breach of confidentiality, and providing incorrect information. So even when they do not provide any designs, all builders in the course of their work are given advice or information to their clients. If any of that advice or information is incorrect, this may leave the builder open to a claim for negligence. So we'd always suggest it's worth having that type of cover in place just in that event, really. So what other covers might be required? So we've got so the commercial vehicle or fleet cover. It's a legal requirement to make sure your vehicles are covered whilst on the road. For your commercial vehicles, you need that cover for them, especially if you have a fleet, which is 2 or more generally vehicles at your business. And it also keeps your business moving if your vehicles are involved in an accident or suffer a loss. So you need to make sure you've got your commercial vehicles covered either separately or under a fleet policy. And again, you can potentially get fleet cover for 2 or more vehicles. Fleet cover is very helpful in the event that you want any driver over a certain age. 25 is usually the main one, any driver over 25 or 30. And it's much quicker to add or remove vehicles under a fleet policy. You don't have to go to each policy to make changes. It's under one single policy. So the fleet side of it does help a lot of our clients, especially if they've got 2 or more vehicles. The next one is the personal accident, which pays compensation to people who suffer injury or death as a result of an accident. This can be covered out of works as well. It's not just in works. It protects from loss of income whilst unable to work, and it removes the pressure of not being able to meet financial commitments whilst recovering. So yeah, that's another thing that can be added singly on its own, in its own right, or you can add it potentially to a policy you already hold through F&B Insurance. The next one is directors and officers. This protects the directors and the senior members of the business. Cover for the financial cost of allegations made against them. As an example, if you're accused of disregarding health and safety regulations or being negligent in the course of their duties. This could also cover misleading statements, but it depends on the type of policy you have and how robust that policy is. Commercial legal expenses. So commercial legal expenses is designed to meet the needs of the business, providing legal costs from a claim or dispute that your business is perhaps going through. Employees, so the type of insurance this policy would cover is employment and contract disputes and compensation awards. Now, contract disputes, I would say, is quite a big thing and something that a lot of our clients require in the event there's any issues with the contract. That would generally be given as a standalone legal policy rather than an add-on to a liability policy, because again, they're more robust and they give that extra cover. Contract disputes for sale, hire, lease of goods, etc. Debt recovery, jury service and witness expenses, property protection, data protection, tax protection, and a lot more. It covers a wide width of cover. So property insurance. So for the property side, it's commercial and residential property, so loss or damage to the buildings and of course the contents. This could include damage to stock, shortfall in income, loss of rent, fixtures and fittings, also unoccupied property, so for vacant homes such as empty rentals, new builds awaiting sale, buildings awaiting conversion. This would cover perils like home insurance such as flood, fire, storm, theft and vandalism. We also do have additional offers of unoccupied undergoing works, which we can also cover as well. The biggest thing here I would suggest is always let your home insurer know if there's work being done to the property. It's very, very important, because more often than not, they won't cover it if there's work being done. So you can always come to us and speak to us about that, and we can have a discussion over it.
I'd also add, sorry to interrupt you, but on unoccupied property, we've seen a significant rise in the applications that we get for unoccupied property for 2 reasons in particular. One being properties that have been purchased with a view to convert them, but might be waiting on planning applications to come through. And we have also seen a rise in the number of new build properties that are then unoccupied whilst awaiting sales or mortgage applications once the builds have been completed. So certainly the property insurance and unoccupied property, it very much seems to be on the rise within the industry at the moment.
Yes, yeah, it is. But again, any questions, you can always come to us, and we're happy to discuss it further with you. So the final one on here is cyber. So for anyone really that's using a computer or mobile phone as part of your work day to day, invoicing, anything that really has personal information on there used from your business is part of the cyber aspect of it. It's everything is done digitally nowadays anyway, managing the supply chain, making payments, emailing customers, all those things. This covers for things such as ransomware attacks leading to business interruption or intercepted payment fraud, which we have an example of, don't we, Emma?
Yeah, intercepted invoices in particular. So we have a number of examples where contractors have received an invoice that looks legitimate from a company that they are expecting an invoice for, but actually, and the email address looks legitimate, but within it, the BACS details that are applied to the invoice have been altered. So it can appear as if it is a legitimate invoice that you were expecting. However, when digging into it a bit deeper, actually that invoice has been manipulated en route to the contractor. And what cyber insurance does is not only investigate those circumstances, but crucially provides those funds back in the meantime, which can be a significant amount of money dependent on, you know, what invoices it is. The ones that we've seen examples of tend to be invoices with merchants, so quite substantial invoices that are being paid.
Yeah. And just to bring a point as well, the ransomware, it's the cyber side of this is quite interesting. It is literally a company or, you know, doing illegal activity, trying to obtain information from you and basically saying, we're not going to give this back without a certain amount of money to be paid. And cyber will help assist with that and cover those aspects as well. So it's fairly new. And I think a lot of contractors kind of are asking questions over this now, because these sort of claims are growing quite fast. So it's something we want to be on top of, and obviously explain it to our clients as well, what this is and why it's needed, really.
Certainly, yeah. And I think importantly, whereas cyber policies historically tend to be more designed for those that were quite tech-based industries, now there are cyber policies that are specific. So we work with a company that specifically deal with SME construction cyber risks. So it's not a case that it's for more digital industries or others that are more tech focused in certain ways, but actually there are now specific cyber policies for exactly the industry that we are in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. So we've gone through the different policies that a business needs in order to make sure they're covered correctly, but actually what about the projects that you're undertaking? So the first policy type that I wanted to talk about was the FMB Building Work Guarantee. This is a kind of insurance-backed guarantee that is there for consumer peace of mind. It's there for any home improvement projects, whether that be an extension, a loft conversion, roofing works, whatever type of work it might be. But we also offer this for local authority grant works, wet rooms, for example, and there's different levels of cover within it. There can be a 2-year, a 6-year, or a 10-year option post-completion. We also find that we write a number of these policies for individuals that are doing new build works where their own new homes warranty or latent defects insurance cover may exclude elements such as a flat roof cover, in which case you're able to get that cover through one of our own building work guarantees to support the policy that you have for the new home. Increasingly, this product is seen as a really good tool to stand out from the crowd. So firstly, we did some consumer research as part of the FMB did. We appointed a company to do it on our behalf, and we did focus groups of different homeowners that are all across various different backgrounds. But the one thing in common was that they all had a property and they were all having building work done. As well as those focus groups, we also did a questionnaire of all of them as well. And 85% of the consumers that were within those panels said that they would be more likely to choose a builder that could provide a policy like this over one that couldn't. And actually only 12%, there's another 12% that said they probably would be more likely, it would depend on the cost. Only 3% of consumers said that an insurance product like this wouldn't factor into their decision making about when they're choosing a builder. So actually we view this as a really good tool to stand out from the crowd and make your own quotation more attractive than maybe some other competition at the time. As part of this product, we've put together a whole host of different resources, so everything from literature for you, the members, to understand what this policy is and how to use it. But we've also put together guides for homeowners about understanding what this policy is, how it reacts, and why it's a great tool for a member that can provide this, why it makes them a more attractive builder over non-members that then can't provide financial protection as well. So these resources are all available to all members. They're across the FMB website, the insurance website, and also the member area, the app. All of them have information about the product that we offer. We also offer a new build policy. This is a new homes latent defects insurance policy. We can offer it for 10 years or we can offer it for 12 years. for anyone that is undertaking new build construction. Whilst not a legal requirement, a new build policy is a requirement of mortgage lenders. So it's very unusual for somebody to not be able to not have to not take a policy like this out. It means that you wouldn't be able to have any mortgaged person purchasing the property, not just initially, but within the 10-year period afterwards. The policy is there to provide cover for any defects in the design, workmanship or materials that become apparent after the structural waterproofing, become apparent in the structural and waterproofing envelope after completion of the build. But it also has cover in there for deposit protection, non-compliance with building regulations, alternative accommodation and removal of debris, as well as a few other elements of cover.
Emma, if you don't mind me asking, what's the liability period for a new build compared to a building work guarantee?
So under a 10-year policy, there is a maximum of a 2-year liability period for one of our members, after which time the insurance then picks it up. And if for any reason the construction company wasn't trading during that time, again, it goes straight to the insurance company for them to pick up any claim. We mentioned at the beginning under insurance and the dangers of cost cutting. And the reason that this is so important at the moment is that we have seen an increase across the industry in the amount of underinsurance. And particularly, it's being reported in industry that this is a concern for SME companies more so than some of the larger companies or multinational companies. The reason being that they feel economic concerns at the moment are leading to insured reducing cover. By reducing cover, we tend to see this being applied to not covering all staff or not covering the correct subcontractors in order to keep the cost of the policy down, but also in lowering the limits to below the level that you might be doing a contract value for. We also see this across the property side as well, where 80% of properties this year are being reported to be underinsured within the UK. So it is a very significant issue, and there are a whole host of reasons why this is quite damaging for the industry, but more importantly for the individuals that are underinsured. So in terms of the risk, well, firstly, it's financial protection, isn't it? Of course. So if you are not covering the correct limits, you are not going to receive the amount that you need in the event of a claim. We also see if people are removing number of people, for example, there are legal requirements to your employer's liability or your vehicle cover. And actually, as well as potentially being incorrectly covered for those staff that you have working for you, you also are then potentially going to receive fines or, in some cases, legal action or custodial sentences because of incorrect employer's liability coverage. It's also a loss of income source if an event occurs. So, for example, if you have removed cover for tools, for example, and then suffer a theft, it's not just the cost of replacing those tools, but it's the days that you then are unable to work until those are recovered. We also see claim declinatures in some extreme cases where people have the incorrect levels of cover, or it might be that the policy isn't declined, but insurers apply average, which would mean if you had only covered half of the policy that you should have, then they will only pay half of the claim that you might be trying to place. So again, there is a serious financial implication. We also think it leads to consumer confidence in this. So increasingly, we are being asked by consumers for evidence of members' insurances, but we're also being asked by solicitors or housing associations, dependent on who you might be working for them to be able to check the insurance documents in place and go back to either the company or the broker in the event that they don't feel the coverage is enough. So there's also a reputational risk there. All of these put your business's future at risk for what might be, a small saving on an insurance policy could be a very large financial cost moving forward. So ultimately, insuring correctly equals peace of mind for you moving forward.
And if you don't mind me saying as well, with regards to the claim declinatures, the amount of quotes and due for renewal where we're receiving documentation from people for their insurance, making sure the risk details and what they actually do is correct is so important, because we do see a lot of that where the business description is not entirely correct and they could be doing certain works which we know would potentially be excluded if there was a claim. So we like to make sure that what they're doing is correct to make sure you are covered for future in the event of a claim, because when a claim does come through, it can be incredibly stressful if it's declined or it's reduced for whatever reason. So it's so important for that part that we're there to kind of help and assist in that and make sure that the work you're doing is correctly insured. Because again, we do see a fair amount of it from others where it's not correct. So we like to make sure that everything is correct and for peace of mind for our clients.
Yeah. So finally, the benefits of using a construction insurance broker. So FMB Insurance, all members have access to FMB Insurance as their construction insurance broker. We are experts in the insurance industry, but of course specialise in construction risks and very closely aligned with the FMB and all the work that is going on there to make sure that we are staying on top of things that change within the construction industry so that we can make sure that our insurance policies do too. All staff at FMB Insurance are qualified by the Chartered Insurance Institute. And between us, we're servicing thousands of customers across the construction industry to make sure that they have got their insurance needs protected and their clients' needs protected as well. And we're award winning. We've won the Insurance Business UK Best Brokerage in the UK First Place Award just over 18 months ago. So we're confident that we can provide a service to any members to make sure that they have got their business covered correctly. So we work with a number of insurers, so around 50 different insurers within the market, including some of those that are listed below, which you'll see are kind of household names. We make sure that any insurer we work with goes through placement checks to make sure that they are suitable and we are comfortable with those as an insurer for your policies. And we know the appetite of each of those insurers so that we can match each client's individual needs to a different insurer and a policy wording that meets their individual insurance needs. Some of which might be e-trade relationships where we can get instant quotes, and some with manual presentations to the market where you maybe have a more complex need. But I think, as Chris said, importantly for us is making sure that everyone is covered correctly and understands what it is that the coverage that they need. So we're also happy to speak to any member and do almost an insurance health check just to make sure that actually, even if you have got a really good policy in place currently with a different provider, we'll just confirm that to you and make sure you feel satisfied that someone has checked that cover over and it does meet exactly what your business requirements are currently. So that to kind of summarize, and if you want to have more information from us about using your construction insurance broker, please do contact us. We're more than happy, Chris, the team and I are more than happy to speak with any of you. And ultimately we are at FMB Insurance and essentially we make insurance our business so that you can focus on running yours. So we focus on the knowledge, the support and the quality of the service that we're able to deliver to you. So to summarise, we have there covered the insurance policies that members need for their businesses, their projects and their clients, how to use insurance as a tool to stand out from the crowd, underinsurance and the dangers of cost cutting, and finally the benefits of using your construction insurance broker. And I will hand back to you, Hayley. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. That was really helpful. Covered an awful lot in that short amount of time. I've been keeping an eye on the questions and there's a few that have come in. The first one was about fleet cover, which you mentioned earlier. And Ali was asking, if you've got fleet cover in place, does that cover you for your personal mileage as well as your business mileage, or would you need a separate policy for when you're using your vehicle for personal purposes?
No, the thing with fleet is it will cover social domestic pleasure and whilst you're at work as well. So it will cover all of it. As long as obviously you make us aware, we can let insurers know. But yeah, the fleet cover will not just cover you for business, it will cover you for personal use as well, using that vehicle outside of work hours.
Yeah, perfect. Good to know. And another question also from Ali. Do you provide a service whereby you will check through the insurance that a member has got and advise them on any gaps that there might be?
Yeah, so more than happy to, as part of those insurance health checks, even if it's somebody that's not a customer that we have placed the insurance for, we're more than happy to look over any member's insurance documents and either say to you, actually what you've got there is exactly the policy you need, or to say, actually we would identify the gaps as being X, Y and Z and provide that feedback.
Yeah, so that would be time well spent, wouldn't it, for any member to make sure that they're properly covered. You mentioned earlier on about subcontractors and when you might need to cover a subcontractor and when you might not, and labour-only subcontractors and that side of things. Can you just clarify who would you need to provide cover for in terms of the subcontractors that might be working for you?
No problem. So we get asked this a lot, and that is, what is a labour-only subcontractor and what is a bona fide subcontractor, and what are the differences in terms of how you cover them? So a labour-only subcontractor is the way insurers look at it is a labour-only subcontractor will come in, they will get paid directly by your business. They will work the hours they need to work. It's basically essentially like a 0-hour contract where they'll come in and work where they can, but they'll get given the tools by your company. They will get paid directly from your company, and they are pretty much working under your full guidance. They're not working under anyone else or themselves. They're working under your guidance to do the work that they're in to do. Now, insurers will look at them and they'll place them under the employee's liability section of the policy. That's how they will cover it. So you would see on the policy documents, the employee's liability section will include a section for labour only subcontracts, and it will confirm either the wage roll or numbers they use, so the number of people they have. If they're not sure if they use 3, 4, or 5 or between in the year, insurers will ask for like an average of how many they use throughout that year to make sure they get in the average kind of usage, to make sure they rate that correctly. So a bona fide subcontractor is someone that's usually a specialist in their own right. So say they're plasterers or electricians or plumbers, but they're coming in, they're working under their own company name, their own vehicle, their own tools, and they're coming in to do a job that you may need them to do. However, it's so important that you make sure that we're made aware of that so we can cover them, and they will be looked at. They won't be covered under the employer's liability section because they're not considered an employee like a labour only would be. They would be covered under the public liability section under what's called contingency cover. And they call it contingency cover because that bona fide subcontractor will have their own insurance, which you would usually check. You should always check to make sure that they have that cover in place. Because in general, if you look on your policy documents, there's usually an endorsement that explains there that you must check anyone that works for you as a bona fide subcontractor. You need to make sure that you check their documents to make sure the work they're doing, they're covered for. So there is that emphasis on the main contractor to check those bona fide subcontractors, because if they don't have the relevant cover, you shouldn't have them working for you on site. You need to make sure you get someone in that has that cover. But that, again, that would be covered under the public liability section contingency cover in the event that something happens and the public liability section of the main contractor's policy may need to kick in if there's a potential claim. But it would always be dealt with under the public liability section, not the employer's liability section.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's really clear and good to know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an important process for members to bear in mind, isn't it? To always check that their subcontractors have got that relevant insurance. I'm always surprised when I hear that public liability insurance isn't a legal requirement, by the way, because it feels like something that you'd expect it would be. But yeah,
certainly when you consider the potential for accident, of course, like for your employer's liability, which is a legal requirement, the same accidents can happen under PL, but to the public or to a third party like a subcontractor. But actually, in terms of severity, can be just as as severe as under the EL section.
And because of that, we tend to get questions where we issue the employer's liability certificate of insurance, and often a contractor will say to us, "Well, where's the public liability certificate?" And there's rarely ever now a certificate for the public liability section because it is not a legal requirement at the moment. That may change in the future, but at the moment it's not a legal requirement.
Yeah. Talking of changes, so I know a lot of members are aware of the Building Safety Act that came in 2022. And so we've had a question about that in terms of what impact has the Building Safety Act had on insurance that members should have. Do you want to take that one, Emma?
Yeah, so actually, it's more relevant. It's made professional indemnity in particular more relevant than ever before. And actually, I don't think the Building Safety Act changes the fact that, if you needed professional indemnity before, you will still need it now. It's not necessarily made it a new requirement that you would need professional indemnity. However, it has highlighted, I suppose, the severity of not having professional indemnity. So for me, the things that I think the Building Safety Act has the biggest impact on is higher claims are expected due to the greater regulatory scrutiny that the Building Safety Act leads to. As well as the change to the limitation period under the Defective Premises Act. That could mean that actually existing closed matters may now be reopened, and actually the tail in which someone could be liable is also has also expanded. Type of work that's subject to the duty under the Defective Premises Act has been expanded. And I think importantly also the list of responsible persons is greater. So considering things like who is the principal designer, who is the principal on site, it is likely, although I will say at the moment we're making assumptions about this because until it is tried in a court or in insurance claims, no precedent has yet been set. But across the industry, it's certainly felt that the Building Safety Act will have a significant impact in the potential for professional indemnity claims moving forward.
Yeah.
And just something as well, just again to make absolutely clear with professional indemnity is you don't have to do any form of design work to still require professional indemnity. It's not just the advice part of it is a builder literally changing anything on those plans when they're on site, which doesn't quite fit, you know, so anything like that where they slightly change it. It's not always just about advice, it's about slightly changing an architect's plan. And we've seen a few examples of it. We talked about it earlier. So we do have those policies where we can give them some form of professional indemnity just on the basis that they are a builder without any design work, just to cover them in the event that may happen.
Yeah. I've spoken to members who've had the situation where there are certain things that are not specified in the architect's plan purely because those decisions hadn't been made at that early stage, like where, you know, which windows were going to be used and all of that. And when those decisions get made, that is considered as design advice as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's another, and that's probably very often the case, I would think, for our members. So they probably need that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I have to say as well, actually, the other policy that it's within the Building Safety Act, but we're not yet seeing the impact on insurance is the Building Safety Act also states that new homes latent defects insurances policies will increase from the 10 years that it has always been required for a mortgage to 15 years. Now that still is a line within the Building Safety Act. However, as yet, no insurance provider has responded and provided that cover. So I would just say as well, for anyone that might be doing new builds and is concerned about the Building Safety Act, we know that 15-year limitation is in the policy. But like I say, the insurance industry has not yet put a policy out that meets that need. They are still all 10 and 12-year requirements.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, there's still a few grey areas, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So if any members have got any last minute questions that they do want to ask, you can type those in the Q&A box now. But just one final question to answer before we finish is around the property insurance and contract works insurance. Can you just clarify what the difference is between those two things?
Sure. So contract works is basically the contractor's own works they're doing on a property. So say they're building a side extension to someone's property. The contract works covers the builder's materials, all the money they're putting into that part of the works. That is the contract works policy that's for the builder. It does not cover the existing property at all. It's not part of that. It is purely the builder's work. So the extension's all covered. If there was a fire at the property and the contract works, the extension was destroyed, the contract works part of the policy would pay to reimburse the builder to be back in the position they were before. If they were 99% done on that job, it would literally pay, say £100,000, it would pay pretty much the whole lot out to put the builder back in the position to get it back up again, built again, and done. The property insurance side of it is a separate matter. The owned property needs to be covered by the property owner in general. And it's so important to mention again that if a contractor has a situation, which they sometimes do with a property owner, where they're not sure who's going to be covering it, I would always say to the property owner, give your insurer a call and just check that the cover's in place whilst there's work ongoing. In general, if you're not occupying that property whilst work is undergoing, it's not going to be covered, and you need what's called a specialist type of insurance, an unoccupied property insurance, which covers work being done on that property as well. So they're completely two separate things, and sometimes people think that contracts all risk will cover everything, including the existing structure, when it doesn't.
Yeah, I think we can understand the confusion, because in terms of the perils they cover, you know, both your home insurance and a contract works policy are providing cover for things like flood, fire, theft. You know, they're covering the same perils, but the important distinction I think there is is it existing, like the original home, and therefore the homeowner's responsibility, or is it new, in which case it's the contractor's responsibility?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's really clear. Well, we don't have any more questions popping up from members, so I think that means that everybody's happy with the information that they've had, and we'll share the contact details that you shared earlier in the follow-up email to all the members as well. So if anybody wants to give you a call and find out a bit more, they can certainly do that. But that's been really helpful. I think if one member goes away with a better insurance protection after watching this webinar, then we've done our jobs, haven't we? Because they're protected against all of the many risks and terrible things that can happen in the course of carrying out building work. And hopefully everybody goes away from this session that little bit more protected. So thanks very much, Emma and Chris. That's been really helpful. And
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We'll see all the members again at the next webinar.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.